This is a dangerous groups that we're dealing with now. It was a nightmare.
Flight 807, you're clear for landing. Runway 7, Bravo.
All personnel report to the nearest tornado shelter. This is not a drill.
If you need help, then dial your operator.
Have no fear, fellow citizens. The Mediator is here.
Good morning and welcome to this week's edition of The Mediator with me, your host, Brian West, here to give you the top 8 headlines and developing news stories that made it this week. As usual, I give you the top 8 local headlines and developing news stories that made it first, followed by a movie clip, a skit, a trailer, or something that's going on in the community, or maybe some pictures. And then I'll give you the top 8 international headlines and developing news stories that made it, folks. So let's waste no time. Ooh, yeah. Let's get to it. Story number 1. What caused the Louisville suicide story? Some years back, terrorists introduced an old method of mass shootings mixed with suicide to the public. Now, ever since then, it has been a disaster for a country riddled with gun misuse. Key word is misuse. Now, locally, there's a gun problem. That's a fact. And after a kid reportedly opened fire on himself in a cafeteria in Louisville, now the question is why? Was it stress? Was it peer pressure? Or did it have anything to do with mental health? So that's the question. Now, at the moment, there seems to be no cure for a continued circulation of gun incidents in the news. And the only thing that's certain is that people will mimic what they see others do. So let's try to be a good influence on other people. And once a person has their mind made up, they will carry it out. They will attempt to carry out whatever they can get to get their point across. So that whatever they can do to carry out their plan to get their point across, they will do it. That means if you throw positive in the atmosphere, people will try to be positive. If you throw in negativity, people will be negative. So let's try to put some positive waves in the atmosphere. Now, the cause is what has this story still trending, the cause of death. That's why this story made it this week. Story number 2. What is Tito's game plan for Youngstown? He's been to a lot of places, even the White House, Washington, D.C. On May 10th, Mayor Jamel Tito Brown made front page news of the Vindicator shaking hands with President Joe Biden, who does not seem to be very popular at the time due to inflation. Now, with over $80 million in aid money flowing through Youngstown, Tito Brown's game plan for the struggling city is also in question. Now, a lot of main roads are still rough in the city. Downtown construction is causing traffic jam issues on busy days, and crime stories continue to riddle the news. Now, citing just about every issue, looking at every issue, when you look at it from a long distance, if you're in the city or however you want to look at it, Brown has shifted the blame on why the city continues to face negative press, even with an abundance of federal dollars flowing in. So that means that even Tito is pointing the finger, saying it's not his fault. Now in his second term, it may be a good time to assess any plans that Brown may have to revive a city whose finances have been saved by aid money and water funds. This story is still developing. Let's see how it turns out. Big headline. Story number 3. COVID-19 is not out of the headlines yet. Yes, COVID-19 is still making headlines, folks. Apparently, there is news in circulation stating that the virus is back on the upswing, and we are not in the clear yet. An article published Friday, May 6th, says that there's been a 31.5% rise in cases. The article also states that cases have risen for the 5th consecutive week in a row. The article then goes on to cite the numbers of cases, thus showing that COVID-19 may be here to stay and has not left the atmosphere yet. That's why story number 3 made it this week. Story number 4. Did local graduation rates improve? Did they? Big question. UNIV Stats has Youngstown states graduates. Well, the graduation rate sitting at about 47.36% last checked. According to Public School Review, Youngstown's graduation rate, the high schools, has increased 11.19%. That's good news. That's over 5 years. Now, showing improvement on all fronts. What people need to hear. Now, this could be a good sign that local education is finally on the upswing. We'll see. Now, everyone has been eyeing education data to meet the standards put in place by high-level officials, including the state. That means the Oversight Commission, the people who have put Youngstown under their thumb, saying if you don't get out of the Academic Distress Commission, that's what they call it. That's why story number 4 made in this week. We'll see how this develops. Story number 5, another pushback for Lawrencetown Motor Corp. More setbacks reported for Lawrencetown Motor Corp, folks. That's not good. The company has made so many headlines lately due to failed vehicle expectations, consistent investment issues, and now the news is about a deal with Foxconn to acquire the electric vehicle assembly plant. One local article cites that if the deal isn't met by May 18th, Lawrencetown Motors would have to refund $200 million in down payments unless the deadline is extended. Let's hope it is. Now, the company was set to launch the Endurance in September and has ambitions to make strides in the electric vehicle market. Now, last checked, 500 trucks were the first production goal numbers put in place by the company. But now, Lawrencetown Motors needs to develop some good news to attract more investors and be able to pay the bills. They got to make money. Now, the article goes on to point out spending. The company has been dishing out cash with its shares down. Now, consistent bad news has been keeping this story alive. So let's hope Lawrencetown Motors gets some good news pretty soon. Big story number 6. Can the local power grid keep up with local state aspirations and missions? Now, in the summer, you have air conditioning, folks. Now you have talks of a mass overhaul to electric vehicles. This all takes power, folks. It takes power and to talk about power. The question is are there any talks brewing about the local power grid to improve it, and if it will be able to keep up with the local and state ambitions to transition to all electric? So that's what those are questions about. Now, as the attack on fossil fuels continues and the energy market, the energy war heats up locally, this could become a top story when it comes to energy and the energy wars. If it hasn't already. Now, there are already signs that efforts to make the transition have started to take place, with certain grants being rationed and certain grants being given to transit services like WRTA and other charging station stories making headlines and shaking up the energy talk that's been in the news. And that's why story number 6 made it this week, because will our power grid here locally be able to sustain all of this talk about electricity? Big story number 7, and the top local headline and developing news story that made it this week. Woo-wee! Came all this way, traveled through the jungles of the valley, just to give you the top 2 this week. Story number 7, drug assistance programs and overdoses. We've got to kick the habit of drugs and switch to the habit of love. Woo. Yeah. Story number 7. The 2021 data is in, folks, and it shows that drug overdoses have increased. The article goes on to cite some eye-boggling numbers and puts the consistent talk about drugs in the headlines. This story also spotlights the consistent failure of many well-funded drug assistance programs. Now, if talk about drug issues stay in the headlines, more pressure will be on the people on the front lines of the drug war. Now, the key word is abuse. People continue to abuse drugs, and no matter how much help is out there, if these people don't seek help and admit that they have a problem, these failed stories will continue to make headlines. That's why story number 7 almost made it to the top this week, because the drug battle is big headline. Story number 8 at the top, lucky number 8 ball. Local story that made it this week. Top story. Yeah. Story number 8. It's time to assess what is working and not working locally, folks. As more stories continue to surface about local violence and unsolved crimes, people will continue to assess what is working and not working locally. Now, with the new graduation data coming in showing some improvements or some signs of people at least graduating, there's a still growing decline in enrollment and population numbers. Education assessment will always prove critical in this story and what is improvement and not. Now, a consistent flow of aid money balanced many budgets. So that's but now that inflation is eating away at any gains, this could be another factor. Now, overall, analysts will be homing in on the data to assess what is working and what is not working locally. This story is still developing. That's why I made it to the top this week. Big headlines, folks. Well, those are our top 8 local headlines and developing news stories that made it this week. I'll be right back with the top 8 international headlines, so don't you go anywhere. You're in the Mediator. Me, Brian West. I'll be right back.
What does Method8Inc.com Media Center have that I need?
Small prints, event consulting, photography, business consulting, technical consulting, entertainment consulting, fundraising advice, event videography, movies, news, publishing, media, books, entertainment, acting, broadcasting, public relations, access to the visual and performing arts, ink and black ink refills, audio recording, graphic design, theater, minor computer and cell phone repair, and they're located at 5648 Market Street in Boardman, Ohio from 10 a.m. until 6 p.m. every Monday through Friday. The list goes on and on.
Method8Inc.com. Buy stuff, watch stuff, or read stuff.
Welcome back. Now it's time to get to the top 8 international headlines and developing news stories that made it this week. Folks, there's a lot of talk about sexual education in the news. Now, me personally, I don't care what anybody does when I'm not around in the bedroom. That's nasty. I'm a nasty man. My daddy's a nasty man. My mama's a nasty woman. There's a lot of nasty people in my family. And I don't even want to talk about my uncle because he's a nasty man. But there's a lot of nasty people in the world. Now, when I was little, how I learned about sex education was my daddy, my stepdaddy. You walk in his office, and Lord behold, you walk into the Garden of Eden. Everybody was in their birthday suit. My daddy was into the nastiness, the aphrodisiac. The booty-loodles, the boogaboos. But that's how I learned about sexual education. Pornography is not good for anybody, but that's how it was introduced to me. And my eyes was open. So when I started talking about sex, my daddy smacked me and said, no! You get your education. You get your life together. I talked to my mom. She said, Brian, get it together first before you go out there doing the boogaloo. Do the loop. And there was some girls who got lucky. Yes, I am a nasty man. But at the end of the day, I got on my knees and prayed. I asked for forgiveness for healing in my soul and spirit. And I'm a purified mediator. Whew. And that's how I learned about sex education. So if you're thinking about being nasty girl, all night it's going to be a fantasy. Oh, little nasty world. I'm talking about Miss Jackson. If you're nasty, think about me. Sex education ain't for everybody, folks. But be purified. And try to hold it off. Go for a jog. Lift some weights. Do something. But if you want to be nasty and learn about sex education, don't learn too early. Learn a little bit later. And that's my message this week for the Mediator. Sex is good, but it's not good too early. It's good a little bit late. Well, that's my story. And I'm sticking to it, baby. Ooh, let's get to it. Story number 1. Nasty people out there. The gift and the curse of the tech age. Speaking of nasty, there's a lot of nasty women online. I've seen them. I admit it. Twitter and Elon, Facebook and Mark, Microsoft and Bill, Apple and Cook and Jobs, if you want to be exact. The list of tech companies is big, folks. One big story is how big tech companies have gotten. But now the talk is about security and information. People have been able to hack networks, and social behavior is a real concern for the older generation. They don't want their kids being too attached to the computer. Now, there are gifts in this growing story, but the curse is what has it trending. And if security remains an issue, we could be seeing some changes soon in the tech arena if we aren't already. That's why story number 1 made in this week. Story number 2, guns and death remain in the headlines. Death! That's sad. A Texas high schooler made headlines after being charged with murder after stabbing a classmate to death in the bathroom. That's bad. New CDC data shows that the United States now has the highest rate of gun-related deaths in more than 25 years, according to a CNN article. That's bad. Youth gun violence, not just gun violence, youth gun violence has also increased, linking teens to somehow being able to obtain guns, according to a USA Today report. That's bad. These are all just a few headlines to keep an eye on, proving that something needs to be done about the increase in gun-related deaths and uses in gun-related crimes. This is bad news. That's why story number 2 made it this week. Whew. Story number 3, medical coverage front and center. Now the talk is about COVID-19 and Medicaid coverage and how some could lose out. The USA Today headline says that 5 to 14 million Americans could lose Medicaid coverage once the pandemic ends. Here is a key stat, folks. The number of uninsured Americans dropped to 8.8% at the end of 2021 because many gained Medicaid coverage under the Affordable Care Act. The article goes on to talk about the Affordable Care Act, which offered more generous ACA Affordable Care, a more Affordable Care Act marketplace with subsidies while also lowering premiums for many people, many Americans. Now, the article concludes by talking about what observers will be looking out for, like what happens with overall coverage and if there's an uptick in the uninsured rates, the data. So sure you get the picture. Now, this is all according to Robin Radowitz, director of the Kaiser Family Foundation, who was interviewed in the report by USA Today. Big headlines. So story number 3 made it this week. Story number 4. All eyes on President Biden. Can he make it through his term? Big question. Biden is much different from Trump. That's a fact. That's a fact. Now, the talk now is all business, folks, and the position the current president is putting the American people in. The talk is also about the sustainability of the states that form the American Union. United States. Observers see a globalist who is out of touch with the American pocketbook, while his supporters see a gentle Democrat trying to revamp their common interests. Now, either way, you look at it, Republican, Democrat, Independent, whoever, something is conjuring up under this administration, and a lot of hard-working people are starting to feel cheated. That's because of inflation and all the other things that come along with Biden's agenda. Now, Biden's health also remains a top concern because many say he's suffering from dementia and will not make it through his term. The story is still developing. Well, folks, those are our top four international headlines and developing news stories that made this week. I'll be right back with the top 4. So don't you go anywhere. You're in the media. Me, Brian West. I'll be right back. If you want to check out the stories that almost made it in or did make it in, go to our Twitter feed on our website. Check out everything. All of the sources are there. And go to the website. It's method8inc.com. Welcome back. Now it's time to get to the top 4 international headlines and developing news stories that made it this week. Folks, my mother has been really talking about retirement lately. I retired years ago. But I've done this voluntarily. Retirement is a big decision. It's a big commitment. And those who make it, I get messed up on active duty, so I have nothing else to do but to spend my time serving the community. But my mom, she's getting up there, and she's really considering it. And I keep telling her, I said, when you do retire, you end up sleeping for about 2 weeks, I slept for 3 days straight. And then I woke up and I realized that I literally had nothing to do. So I started finding things to do. And that's thus leading me here to the retirement, back into the service workforce, trying to improve and train. So if you're thinking about retirement out there, especially Lisa Jane, think about me, is that some people just cannot sit down. You travel, you see things, see the same thing over again, and the little lily pond can only be blue for so long until you finally decide that, I need something to do, folks. And that's why I want to thank you for tuning in, because this could be your retirement gift right here. Watching the news, staying informed, getting involved, being an activist. That's what I've done for ever since I retired, and this is what I've been able to do for years. And I'm so proud of being the mediator. I walk across the communities and I see things happening, and I report. I see smiles and laughter, and I report. I see sadness and trials, and then I report. But the most thing of all is I see healing and generations of love growing. And I report, baby. Woo! Yeah! There's a story that I find in every story. Yeah. And I report for you. Navigating the news, even in retirement. Whew. I don't even think MJ got this far, folks. I've got championship rings, baby. Ooh, yeah. Let's get to it. Story number 5. Ooh. Reporting can get exciting sometimes. Is threatening and protesting outside of a Supreme Court judge's house a good move? Speaking of reporting, folks, the abortion stories are now emerging in front page news. One of the biggest stories that hit headlines were the protests taking place on the residential lawns of Supreme Court judges. That's bad. Now, for Americans against abortion to protest on the lawns of judges not only seem unreal, but might also be unwise. Supreme Court judges work very, very hard and are highly protected because they enforce and make the rules that govern America. Now, so to try and get the point across, to try to get your point across by protesting on their residential lawns could defeat the purpose of the argument trying to be made. Now, the BBC report also talks about how most protesting is protected by the Constitution, but the article emphasized that violence and vandalism is not. The story is still developing. That's why I made it into the top this week. Big headline. Story number 6. Black America has been used and abused. Some of us. But why is this important? Leo Terrell is all over Black Lives Matter, folks. The Fox News contributor is calling for the organization to be investigated. The article goes on to say that the organization has schemed the black community and wants Congress and states to investigate the organization's use of its $90 million in donations. Now, another report goes on to say how Black Lives Matter's co-founders nonprofit was flooded with secret cash from Silicon Valley tech giants. Now, the number sits at about $4.2 million in undisclosed contributions in 2020. Then comes the abortion report citing the abortion industry, saying what it says. It says that the abortion industry has preyed on black women. That's not good. Even the founder was known for that. That's not good. Now, for Black America, at the end of the day, these are some serious stories of abuse that are important because they are real and have really damaged the foundation of Black America. A foundation that was already fragile and filled with mistrust from the beginning. The story is still developing. That's why I made it this week. Almost made it to the top 2. Story number 7 in the top 2 international headlines and developing news stories that made this week. Step right up. Somebody's got a story. I've got a story to tell for you. Ooh-wee, glistening, baby. In stories, Putins War Game has evolved. Story number 7. But what part does America play? No matter which way you look at this story, folks, Putin's war has taken center stage. Ukraine's inner dealings have also been exposed, and both countries' business deals are currently being evaluated due to a now global war conflict seemingly sucking everyone in. Now, one simple fact remains, and that is whatever Putin has been planning, he has been planning for quite some time. Now, we just have to look back at past engagements and whom the current president has been linking up with and what global events he's decided to attend. Now, at the moment, Putin's game plan is brutal, but no person sits in the head of any nuclear country without a reason. Now, elite players are looking at Putin's current tactics as strategic, while outsiders see them as war crimes. Now the talk is about what Russia has that the world needs, and if Putin's evolving war game is to protect Russia from the global elites, or does he have another agenda? The story is still developing. That's why I made it to the top 2 this week. Story number 8 at the top. Lucky number 8 ball story that made it this week. 8 ball, jam on some stories. Woo, shit, blah, 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 blah. I came through the stories. I feel great. I came through the stories. Now I'm at the top, number 8. Ooh, that boy got some sweet lyrics, baby. Ooh, yeah. Story number 8. Inflation could be sending people into panic mode, folks. Literally. To get an understanding of this story, you have to do the math. Gas, food, services, commodities, and other important life-changing resources cost money. If you double the value of all this stuff, then you box out the buyer, thus decreasing his cash power. His or her. Now, if you're poor, then you become poorer. ER. There are a few headlines drawing attention to this story. Here they are. Shell posted record quarterly profits of $9 billion, according to a CNN report. This is after gas prices hit a record high. USA Today reports that critics are saying that corporate greed is making inflation worse, citing record profits despite rising costs. These 2 headlines alone could send elected officials and analysts into the blame game mode and cause the people scrapping for cash to start searching for some answers. Let's hope they don't protest. Many have already gone into panic mode, folks. Well, those are our top 8 local and international headlines and developing news stories that made it this week. I hope you got something out of today's program. Always get something out of the research. As usual, I'd like to thank all the news outlets, the journalists, the people on the front lines, the media. You deserve all the credit. I'm just the media, the man in the middle. If you want to show some support, it does not take much. Just visit the website on the screen. Buy something, click on something, watch something, read something, or just sponsor a program. I want to thank you so much for tuning in this week. Have a good week, everybody. I'll be back next week looking through over 200 or more stories just for you to keep you informed. Have a good week, everybody. Thank you for tuning to the media this week with me, Brian West. Peace.
Have no fear, fellow citizens. The Mediator is here.